no time to talk. Music loud and women warm. I've been kicked around since I was born. You know it's alright, it's okay. We can look the other way. We can try to understand the New York Times effect on me.
Hello and welcome to the Alive, Staying Alive podcast. We are joined today with the lovely Pam. Welcome, Pam, for the first time on a Staying Alive podcast. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Awesome. Now, Pam is all the way from WA. She's one of, I guess, one of our OGs, I like to say, with the Australia Let's Improve Vaping Education movement. So it's a live movement.
Which is
There we go.
no?
AliveAdvocacyMovement.com, and even got the t-shirt to show. Yes, we've even got merch now. So fantastic. Before we go further into it, Phil, welcome to join us at Alive. We're a friendly mob, all swimming in the right direction, we believe, and we'd like more input than less input, particularly from vapors across Australia. We believe that they need to be heard. That's what we're all about. We basically meet regularly, we discuss things regularly. Jump on board, be a part of it, check it out, how to join on our website, or I might even just throw on a QR code onto the screen about there. I'll put a QR code on the screen about there. And you can also subscribe to, if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, about there. Click the bell as well. Pam's looking at the screen going, what are you pointing at? Because that's all post-production stuff, but that's cool. Well, welcome, Pam. We here on the Alive podcast, the purpose is education, basically. Educating the public, letting them know what vaping is all about. Is it about the kids? Because I tell you what, look, last thing I want to do is insult our guests. And you only look a little bit over age 21. But you don't look like a teen. So I'm guessing you're not a teen underage vapor, as our health
No,
minister likes to
actually,
portray.
I'm a 70-year-old age pensioner.
Wow. So, what made you get into vaping?
Well, in the first place, like I've smoked since I was, 15, 16. And
Right.
I tried many times to quit. I think the first time I tried to quit, I was only 18. And I
Okay.
thought, oh, this is very difficult. And anyway, so I failed. I tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed over many years. And then what is really interesting is I gave up smoking. I managed to give up smoking when I was around 28. But that triggered a 4-year-long clinical depressive episode.
Oh, okay.
So, and I didn't realize that that's what had done it until many years later. Because what happened, I didn't smoke through the entirety of those 4 years. I was in a relationship with someone that didn't smoke. And so that was quite easy. Well, I don't know, it was easy. But anyway, after 4 years, I did take up smoking again. And then when I was about 56, I thought, look, I had a diagnosis of early emphysema, signs of emphysema.
Ooh.
So I thought, look, I'll have to give up smoking because I really don't want this to get worse. So I did. I stopped smoking, but in a matter of days, I recognised the early signs of depression, and I just thought, I am not putting myself through that again. I wouldn't survive it. I'd probably top myself because it was horrendous.
Wow.
Anybody who's had a clinical depression knows. It's difficult to explain to somebody who hasn't had one, but the psychic pain is enormous. So I thought, at this age, at 56, I can't do that again, and it would be very hard on my partner as well. So I thought, I've got two choices here. I can smoke and get emphysema, it'll get worse, or I can be depressed. And I chose not to get depressed. I thought I'd rather have emphysema than depression. All we've really got is how we feel. It's our emotions. That's what you've got.
Yep.
So And then shortly after that, I discovered e-cigarettes online. So I ordered some, and I started off on this type of thing. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah, little cigarette.
Yeah, the little
Wow.
e-cig with the orange light at the end. I don't know if the light still works.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, look,
Don't know if
there you go.
it's dead.
No,
And then
it works. It works.
then I graduated to these ones with the button,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
The pen looking ones. Now the problem was they weren't quite satisfying enough. I was determined to
Yeah.
stop smoking, but these weren't quite doing it. So I dual smoked and vaped for 5 years.
Okay.
And then 9 years ago, I discovered the mini pod. First of all, it was a my pod,
Oh yes, yes.
right? And that worked. And I stopped smoking.
Oh wow.
So it
Okay.
was satisfying enough. So then they went out, they became unavailable. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And then I discovered what I'm using now, which is
The
and I've used
cocoa.
cocoa
Yeah.
mini
Yeah.
pod, right?
Yeah.
And this is it. This is absolutely perfect for me. So 9 years I haven't. But anyway, to get back to the depression story, when that happened, I rang Quitline or Quit. What is it? Quitline? Not
Yeah.
Quit.
Quit line. Yeah.
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 And I said to them, is it likely that if I stop smoking, I could trigger a depressive episode? And they went, oh goodness, yes. If you're somebody who's ever had a clinical depressive episode before, for heaven's sake, go to your doctor and get on antidepressants before you try and quit smoking. And I'm like, well, too late. I've already done it. Then I realized, shit, that's probably what triggered my depression back when I was 28. I stopped smoking, and I'd been smoking since I was 16 or 15, even. I don't, young. So for me, I will be vaping until I die, basically, because it's keeping me away from being depressed. So for me, it is actually therapeutic for me, and I think
Sure.
for a number of other people, it will be the same. And I know of one person who's actually told me a very similar story. Tried to stop vaping, started to feel depressed. So we would be a tiny percentage of the people who vape. That is not the reason most people vape. They're
Yeah.
vaping to stay off smoking. But it does have, it's known that nicotine has antidepressant properties. Anybody can Google
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely, it
So
does. And it's kind of
yeah,
interesting because we sort of see a lot of rhetoric in public health telling kids the opposite. They're saying
that's
it
true.
causes depression. But when you
Yeah,
look closer, what they're really saying is look, some people enjoy nicotine, it helps them function better.
yeah,
Some people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, Tourette's, those neurological conditions,
absolutely.
it can actually help light a spark, so to speak. And well, no, that's not really a scientific term, but that actually does help ignite those neurological pathways,
Yeah,
and yeah, help avoid things such as depression, etc. So I think
yeah,
that's absolutely awesome. Yeah, because finding the right device for you to be able to quit on was obviously important.
yeah,
Yeah, it took you 5 years to sort of find
yeah.
that right device.
It
Yeah,
did. Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean, I think I had a box full of these e-cig type things, and and then the other thing that I really liked was that this is a straight, you know, um, draw. There's no button. I just draw, and that's what I wanted
Yeah,
too. I mean, I wouldn't horribly object if there was a button, but it's kind of
yeah.
that's what suited me. But yeah, that's been really important. I think that's important for everyone. You've got to
And
find the right device for you.
I agree absolutely and totally. And I think there's so many people around Australia with their own story as yours, Pam. And as I know that I speak to and I have over the many years, um, that are struggling right now because I know the journey they've taken to try and find the right device and to see what works with them to help them remain smoke
Yeah,
free. But the biggest problem is, as I talk to Australians, and I know you do quite a bit as well now, Pam, um, for full disclosure, um, is that there are a lot of people struggling to find the devices that they were used to around Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's really, really tough. I mean, go and check it out on our website. You can go and have a look at a lot of quit stories over on liveadvocacymovement.com, and simply click on quit stories, and you can see all sorts of stories from around Australia, all unique. Everyone's got their own story and their own reasons that they were able to quit smoking. And if yours has been to quit cold turkey, congratulations. If that's worked for you, double thumbs up. If you've been able to quit with the patches and the berries, the lozenges and the apps, or some sort of, you know, hypnosis or bloody acupuncture or something else, I think good on you. Some people just can't find a pathway out, and I think Pam, you're a prime example of a success story. Really.
Well, certainly
So
how I
yeah, absolutely. So essentially, by the sounds of what you must have been smoking for 40 years.
That's right. I started when I
40,
was 14 or 15, I started. And I remember
right?
the first smoke I had. I was so determined to be a smoker. I got all dizzy and just about fell off a fence that I was on and felt sick, but I stuck to it. And yeah, and then I smoked for many, many years. Yeah,
Yeah, and you did the Mark Twain. I'm gonna quit tomorrow. I'm gonna quit tomorrow. I'm gonna quit the next day, next week, or whatever the
absolutely.
next thing was.
I
And
know. Yeah,
and
exactly.
so 40 years, like seriously, is our health authorities doing when it's stifling the ability to prevent people like yourself, Pam, from
Yes,
accessing
exactly.
vaping goods after 40 years of smoking? What are they doing?
Mm. And they've got it so wrong. And where they get the confidence that they're right about this, it's absolutely boggling when you look at the evidence in other countries and the fact that you can, like, an individual at the moment who imports or under this legislation, who imports vaping equipment, can be fined $93,000 or 2 years jail or whatever. It's super serious, as if we're importing heroin or something. And they're talking about a product that you can buy in a shop in a hospital foyer in the UK,
That's true.
where cancer organisations, there's a really good video by the Yorkshire Cancer Research Group, Society, whatever. It's called Demystifying Vaping. Highly recommend that people have a look at that video,
It's,
because they're talking about the panic and, well, they talk about a lot of things, but therein you will find the truth about this massive misinformation campaign it's a global kind of attempt to shut down this harm reduction policy. And you have to wonder why would they to follow that path when they're actually, and talking about mental health, the mental health of vapors like myself, many of us have been going through this bloody mental emotional roller coaster for years about what's going to happen. Will I be able to vape? Will I have to go back to smoking? And many people are going back to smoking. I would say in their thousands by now, even in this short period of time, especially people who hadn't vaped for very long,
well,
and
maybe
people.
maybe
Yeah, go
that's
on.
the gateway to smoking that you're talking about. So what we'll do is ban all the vapes, and those people who had stopped smoking with vaping, now not able to access vaping products, go back to smoking.
Mm.
Then wouldn't it be maybe fairer to say that government misinformation or misregulation or poor regulation is a gateway to smoking?
It absolutely is. I mean, all you
Hmm.
have to look at is that the reality. It's a fact.
So it's not the vapes as such that are a gateway to smoking. See, what's got me is a couple of years ago, sorry, probably around about 4 years ago, uh, Emily Banks from the Australian National University, she was paid about 900,000 to $1 million.
Oh,
Just,
yeah.
just a nice little sweetener, just to do a few what do they call it? My analysis studies, um, for the health minister at the time, Greg Hunt. to find that vapes were apparently 3 times likely to cause you to want to smoke. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, but then, well, what's got me is there's another study going on at the moment by Dr. Becky Freeman, working on a project called Generation Vape, which are millions and millions of Australian dollars is going into of all of our taxes. And apparently now it's 5 or 6 times they're finding. And now, lo and behold, I don't know where Mark Butler's plucked the figure from, but I'm hearing him at a press conference yesterday. Apparently there's 29 times greater chance of smoking or vaping leading to smoking. Now, maybe because if he says the bans are working as he's confident to say that they are, well, I can kind of see that based on that, there might be 29 times greater chance of vaping leading to smoking, because if you can't get your vapes anymore and you've stopped vaping, then you're wanting to get your nicotine and the patches don't do it for you and the gums and the lozenges, well, you're going to smoking.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we've solved the gateway theory.
It just makes sense. Really, it's just ridiculous. There was a little clip on Channel 9 or somewhere, and there was these 2 teenage girls sitting on a step somewhere, and they were being interviewed. And this young woman said that she was smoking now because it was getting harder to get vapes. So she said, "I'm smoking now to try and get off the vapes," is what she said. And she's buying her smokes from the black market, of course. So look, the result of all this is going to be 2 black markets. Well, they're kind of melded into one, the tobacco and vaping. The vaping's not tobacco, but they're going to sort of join up together and create this massive sort of thing. I just don't see why they think that they can do it. Like, it's immoral anyway. From my perspective, what they're doing is immoral because they are removing a life-saving device, and people will die. People will get diseases. They will die as a result of this legislation. There's no question about that.
Yeah,
in my
look,
mind.
as it stands, from October the 1st, as it stands, apparently we will no longer need a prescription. Anyone could go to any chemist anywhere in Australia. Apparently, anywhere in Australia, it's all going to be too easy. So maybe that 29 times chance of going back to smoking will diminish. Maybe it'll diminish. What do you think, Pam? Because I saw something that passed my eyes there on the Twitter sphere, aka the Elon Musk's X, only yesterday, that showed an Amcal chemist with a great big sign.
I saw that.
Yeah, with a great big sign. We are not going to stock vapes.
Yeah.
Wow. So, but surely our health minister wouldn't lie, would he?
Yes. Well, only repeatedly.
Well,
I mean, his basic justification for this legislation is a lie. He said he's told the Australian public that vapes were introduced to Australia and marketed in Australia as a therapeutic product. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's never been marketed as a therapeutic product. It has the benefit that you are no longer smoking. For me, it has a therapeutic benefit. And for a percentage of us, it does. But overall, the reason it was invented, I'm going to read a little bit here because, so the Australian government has the most restrictive vaping legislation in the world. It's the only country where a prescription is required to access vapes, where that's ever been the case. I know that's going to change on October the 1st, but it's never been the case anywhere else. So in order to justify that legislation, Minister Butler repeatedly lies and says vapes were introduced to and marketed in Australia as therapeutic, not recreational products. He goes on about the recreational bit. In fact, now this is the truth. E-cigarettes, which evolved into vapes, were actually invented in 2003 by Chinese pharmacist Honlik as a much safer substitute for smoking, so people could still enjoy nicotine in a way that closely resembled what they were used to. Swapping is stopping. If you're vaping water vapor, you're ipso facto not smoking. Vapes are and were always intended to be both a way to stop smoking and pleasurable recreational products. They're consumer
Wow.
products. They were always intended for that, and that's exactly how they were marketed by the vaping industry. So those two things that he says are both untrue.
Yeah,
So,
I
and
concur.
the last thing I'll just put here is the individual vapor could decide their own priorities as to whether they intended to reduce and or eventually quit nicotine, which is a relatively harmless drug, or not. It's our choice.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
he's completely lied, and he's done it repeatedly. He did it again yesterday, the same lie. And the other lie, of course, is the tobacco. Tobacco companies had no interest in vaping until they started to realize that people were doing it a lot because the vaping industry was consumer driven. It was
That's right.
created by consumer. Once the e-cig was out there, Conlex e-cig, people took it up for what a great idea, and a vaping industry grew. And it
Yeah,
had nothing to do with tobacco companies. And
big to
still, vast majority of vapes that we adults vape are not big tobacco vapes. They're just not. They come from our own industry. So he lies, he lies, he lies. So your question, would Mark Butler lie? Along with a whole bunch of other people, yes, constantly.
like what could possibly be in his best interest. Now, I do understand on the back of what you were just saying there that yeah, from about circa I think 1960s was about the first patent of an aerosol generating vaporizer that was presented
Oh,
to the tobacco industry, and there was another further effort I think a little bit later on after that as well. Before Honlik finally brought in a newer generation
right.
with smaller electronics and better done. Absolutely. But my point is, the big tobacco industry had a chance from the early 60s,
Yeah.
from the early mid 60s.
I think I read a book about that called The
Yeah,
Smoke Ring or something
yeah,
years ago.
probably. But yeah, so they had 40 years to bring out a reduced harm product to the market, but they
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
Big Pharma meant to have the smartest people within the most highly financially assisted laboratories and scientists from around the planet
Yeah.
couldn't come up with a reduced harm product that was more effective than about 5% as the gums, lozenges, and patches and that sort of thing
Yeah.
are. They couldn't come up with it. So yeah, this the vaping is an independent product that had nothing to do with big tobacco. So when Mark Butler says yesterday there in Adelaide, it's a case of big tobacco trying to hook a whole new generation.
Yeah.
Now, I fucking hate big tobacco, pardon my French. Might have to put a little beep on that one. But I hate big tobacco just as much as the next person. They killed my grandfather and my
Yeah.
grandmother, and I'm not happy about that. No more than happy than most Australians and most people around the world who have lost a loved one too soon to smoking. But by God, if they want to produce something that reduces harm, then and they've got some market share in that space, well, why the hell not? And
Exactly. I agree. It's like that was then, this is now.
yeah, absolutely. And the only big tobacco products that have been on the Australian market in any source sense of a presence have only just happened pretty much this year. Pretty much this year, where they've gone into chemists. The most, if not all, of other vaping products on the Australian market had never had anything to do with big tobacco.
No.
And believe you me, obviously, by my previous spiel, we don't have. I've got no reason to defend them. That's for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't know where my pink unicorn is.
Yeah, exactly.
He goes on about that. I mean, all of us adults, who have been vaping, not disposables, and I've got, I'm not opposed to disposables. I'm opposed to the way this has happened and the way it's, but as for them themselves, it's only the fact that young people are getting hold of them that's made them so, focused on. But yeah, it's like
Look,
most
I,
of us have got not disposables are quite new. We've been vaping for years. I've vaped for 10 years or more with no government interference. Those of us who've been vaping, this only started to happen to us in 2020, wasn't it?
yeah,
With Green
it's amazing what can happen with without government interference, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a challenging question for you, Pam.
Go on then.
Before we go, let's call it new Stone Alive challenge question with Pam. Hypothetically,
Yes.
Mark Butler knocks at your door and
Yeah.
says, "Look, Pam, I've heard your story. Whatever. It's more important that the 4% of daily kids, or the 4% of the kids vaping daily here in Australia, aren't exposed to vape products. So we need you to hand over all your vaping products, accessories, everything." How do you reply to that?
Well, I was going to say something rather violent. and that's
I
probably
said it
all you
was
need to know.
challenging.
It is challenging. The challenge is to resist talking about, bombs and guns and things.
Mm,
I mean, he's a murderer. I mean,
okay.
really, when it comes down to it, and children, it's better that they vape. It's better if they don't vape or smoke. But if they're going to do either one, it's better that they vape than they smoke. And
Right.
all paths are leading to smoking for them at the moment. Thanks, Butler.
But
Because
he,
if they can't get their vapes, they're young. So let's say the border force is successful, which it won't be, but you know, there are young people going to smoking because they're finding it hard to get vapes. I mean, for Christ's
but we
sake.
can't. But we can't be trusted with you, Pam. We cannot be trusted that you won't hand over your vapes to a kid who's underage, or maybe leave it lying around on a table. We've got to seize them. We've got to take them off you, because
Stop poking
we
me.
we, we need to quell this scourge on the Australian landscape of public health.
I think I would tell him that he's the scourge on public health, that he is going to be directly responsible for horrible disease and death. And how does he sleep at night, basically? And no, you're not getting my vapes. Fuck off.
So on that note, a very, very important note, I think, too. Look, I think, look, it did take us. One thing I do agree with Professor Simon Chapman on, it did take a long time. It did take a long time to work out what the harms were on smoking. It took about nearly 50 years before that famous Royal College of Physicians report happened in the UK. Coincidentally, Royal College of Physicians say vaping is 95% safer than smoking. What? But they were the people
Yeah.
who called out the harms on smoking in the first place. Oh no, they're lying. No, but what I do agree with Simon Chapman is it took 50 years. About that. It took around 50 years to work out that smoking is bloody awful for you. And I think it's important that we don't take another 50 years to work out that vaping isn't awful for you, and that
Yeah.
it can actually help people start smoking and enjoy a recreational flavored vape,
Exactly.
just as adults can enjoy a flavored alcohol or whatever an adult pleasure may be. Pick your poison it's your body. You've got an autonomy from age 18 in Australia.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. That's where we're going. That's where we've got to end up.
Absolutely.
But you know, they're going to put us through all this rubbish in the meantime.
Yeah. Look, I think we've covered quite a bit today, Pam. I want to thank you so much for coming and hanging out with little old me, and being an integral part, an integral part of the Alive advocacy movement. Next week we're going to have a rolling list of guests come through. It's going to get very, very exciting. If you want to see Pam come back, I know I do. Let us know in the comments below if there's something that you want to be seen talked about or addressed on this podcast. Also, let us know in the comments below if you've got the facility, or you can also email us via our website. So thank you once again, Pam, and yeah,
It's a pleasure.
I think it's
And
awesome.
thank you, Pippa, for all the work that you do. You're just absolutely star. Your name is most appropriate.
Thank you, and it's been fantastic to hear from you, Pam, to know that you've been staying alive for at least 15 years or better, which is absolutely awesome. 70 years or better. I think that's worth celebrating, don't you? See you on the next one.
Okay. Have a good day.